welcome to Wednesday. Hi, Carrie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just wrapping up your lunch, I see.
Uh-huh.
Hope it's delicious.
Mhm.
Welcome, everybody, to another Workshop Wednesday brought to you by schoolbookkeeping.com. And we are wrapping up our series on payroll fundamentals. And you may notice that normally Kate, who's with us from ADP, is now being not replaced, but we could never replace Kate, but being played today by Elizabeth. You want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your role over at ADP.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for allowing me to join in Kate's place. She leaves, I'm sure, big shoes to fill for me. But yes, Elizabeth Cangialosi. I am located in Charleston, South Carolina. I work for ADP. I just started my 17th year with ADP in September. So I have done a lot of different things within that time frame, but most recently, the last 9 years, I have spent my time in our PEO, Professional Employer Organization division, and it's called ADP Total Source. That's the name of our PEO. So if you hear me reference Total Source, that's what I'm referencing.
They're interchangeable.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so we appreciate you joining us for that because as we kind of ran through this 6-month payroll fundamentals topics throughout our Workshop Wednesday series here, and we were talking very very basic stuff. Like what is an employee, what is a deduction, and as we get to the landing, the runway here, where we're finishing up this series, things start to, there's always that, well, what if it's more complicated? What if my payroll is more complicated
What if?
than I've hired my family to do, as my employees. I don't necessarily need all these things like an employee handbook because it's just a family business and those types of things. What typically is like the trigger event that you see where things get a little bit more complicated with regards to payroll in general?
Sure. Great question. Gosh, so it has certainly changed over the last couple of years. Certainly, state and federal legislation changes and regulations have, we can thank for that. I would say that currently, in the current landscape that we're in, after the pandemic, we have more people working remotely than ever before. Companies have had to really adapt to this new remote work environment, especially to retain employees because they got a taste of it and want to keep it that way. So, a couple of things that we're seeing right now. One is multi-jurisdiction. So, anytime you have payroll or are running payroll for employees in multiple states, it is certainly a trigger event of an area that you probably want to dip out of because it's incredibly complicated to run payroll and to keep up with the ever-changing, laws, taxes, and such. So that's definitely one area right now that we are seeing a lot of people who perhaps did it in-house before or, were using a QuickBooks even or similar are looking to kind of get out of it. And the other piece, one of the other major triggers, a couple of things. One is growth. So in companies that are either currently sitting in growth mode today or have projected growth plans that, they need to get a scalable solution in place that can help them, allow them to focus on the organization, the growth, what needs to happen, behind the scenes in order for that to happen so that they're not spending their time, in-house worrying about things like HR administration and payroll and employee onboarding and compliance. So growth is certainly one of the other trigger events that we see. I would say, especially with the small to medium sized market, you are definitely a major trigger event is always in benefits, employer-related benefit offerings. The market, the open market that we live in today with company-sponsored health benefits is just so volatile. Renewals that companies are receiving are currently trending in double digits. And with this labor shortage and the great resignation, as they call it, benefits are still a very, very important piece to an employee package, and getting rid of them is really not an option. And so we are seeing that companies are really diving in and looking at all options, all available options that can help them to contain costs, obviously get out of that volatile, up and down market, and also be able to perhaps offer better benefits than what they have today, and hopefully, procure those at better rates, not only for themselves as the employer, but for the employees. And so we're seeing that alongside growth in multi-jurisdiction, is probably one of the third trigger events right now, coming out of the pandemic. Everybody knows there was more health insurance used those years than any carrier could have ever imagined. And with coming out of the pandemic this past year, a lot of elective surgeries and different services that were put on hold have been happening. And so, that is a dictation of what we're seeing in the market now with these high medical renewals that unfortunately companies are starting to see, and we expect that to continue. So I think companies are trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. So Carrie, you would agree with all of those things that she just said, right? Because I think you went through all three of those, the gamuts that she was talking about. Like, yes, all three, you check the boxes, right?
Yes. We actually were using the assisted QuickBooks Payroll for years. I mean, ever since I launched in 2010 when CBG was born, and used it, and I was fine with it, but it wasn't, it was really just running payroll. It wasn't giving me anything extra. And when we partnered up with Kate, I can't recommend stuff unless I'm using it. So we first started with the ADP run so we'd understand how that works, got it working. And then I was like, yeah, but I didn't even know honestly, what PEO was. I didn't until one of our direct leads asked for it. I was like,
let's talk about that. What does PEO stand for? What is it actually?
Different from Run, the Run platform.
Again, we want to be fundamental here.
Yeah.
So let's
Absolutely.
talk about what
so PEO stands for Professional Employer Organization. The business model has been around for many, many years. There's actually over 900 PEOs in the country.
Right.
However, they're not all created equal. But a PEO was designed to be able to help businesses alleviate administration and really procure benefit options and have technology and people support that big, large fortune companies have, that they just, unfortunately, on a smaller scale, it's impossible to get on your own, whether it be from a budget standpoint or employee headcount, you name it. And essentially, the easy way that I always say it to people is, you are still running your business. You are the owner. You're making the decisions. You're calling the shots. You, however, are leveraging ADP or any PEO for that matter in the background to provide you a piece of infrastructure that manages the entire life cycle of the employee for you. You're managing ADP to be the expert in all things compliance. And so you don't have to try to be. And you're leveraging ADP for our buying power and for the ability to be able to hopefully offer a Fortune 500 caliber style benefit suite to your employees. So we kind of sit behind the scenes. You are still the face of the employee, but that essentially and we share in that liability of having employees, which is pretty brings a lot of value to business owners that they don't have to continue to be up to speed on everything compliance when it comes to managing employees. And we know, the risk when you have employees is great. And as you continue to grow, that just becomes bigger and bigger. So
I have a question.
Hopefully that explains it.
I know Dan's going to try to say one real fast, but years and years ago, there was employee leasing. And I know this is different from it. Can you tell us the difference? Because I think that was sort of designed the same way so you get that pool of benefits.
Absolutely. That's a great call out. So employee leasing was designed many, many years ago. However, we are seeing that kind of diminish in the market once ACA, Affordable Care Act, came to be. And, when you had 50 employees or more, you had to have health. We started to see those slowly trickle out. However, employee leasing was created for companies to do just that. Lease employees from a company. So that company made the rules, they hired, they fired, they paid, and the business owner, borrowed them to do whatever job it was they needed to do, but they weren't the employer of that individual. That is not what PEO is by any means. You are still the employer. It is a co-employment model, meaning that you are still an employer. ADP is backing you up as the employer. So at the end of the year, when a W-2 is handed to an employee, it has your logo, your EIN, but it does also have the ADP logo or whatever PEO you choose to be with. And so it is a co-employment model where employee leasing is totally, you really have your hands are tied when it comes to managing employees. And that's a good call because a lot of times people get that very confused and think that the employees are no longer theirs. And that couldn't be further from the truth in a PEO model.
So this is just a great way to tap into the big amount of benefits, I think, the health insurance and so forth.
So the benefit, one of the benefits of as an employer is that you get to leverage a larger pool of resources when it comes to those other employee benefits like health benefits and retirement plans and those types of things. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. You're on the right track. So all benefits, everything from, I always say, any benefit you've ever been offered at a company, ever wanted at a company, core benefits like medical, dental, vision, life, long-term, short-term, all the common benefits that you would expect to have if you went to work for a really large company. But also things like, and people always laugh, but pet insurance, for example, car insurance, home insurance, accident, cancer policies, indemnities. I mean, truly, I always say anything with the word insurance on it, the employees have access to through the PEO's pool. And so again, it goes back to as well, not all PEOs are created equal. So it depends how many people are in their buying pool, right? So you've got little itty bitty PEOs up to ADP, which is the largest PEO. And so the buying power is a big piece to that. Obviously, the bigger you are, the more people in your pool, which obviously lets you leverage the buying power more. So it is exactly that, an entire suite of benefits.
Got it. So, the advantage to the PEO is that now there's more, smaller companies that are bringing their employees into that pool, which then gives them leverage to say, hey, Aetna, you need to lower your premiums or something like that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, think about an organization with 50 employees and they're going out to the open market and trying to procure, a medical plan and keep the costs low, obviously for them and their employees, but also continue to be able to offer a rich medical plan is becoming harder and harder. So, with ADP, for example, we have over 700,000 folks across the country that make up our pool. So that's a big pool, a lot of buying power. So when you're going to market to get rates at 700,000 versus 50 employees, that's a big difference. And so, yes, to your point, that is where you see not only the ability to join more benefits and to procure better costs, but it's a long-term stabilization as well. So the goal is to contain what are typically an employer's largest expenses outside of payroll, their benefits packages and workers' compensation. So by being in the pool, we trend every year in single-digit renewals, which again, small businesses, we're seeing about 19.5% in the open market on average right now, which is very difficult for a small to medium-sized business.
One thing I wanted to ask about so there's a term that's floated out by all payroll providers, not just ADP. This term called full service, right? Right, full service payroll, right, and that means different things to different people. I think from a business owner's perspective, when I hear full service, I'm like, I'm out. Like I am completely out of the decision process or anything like that. Maybe I'll make a few initial choices and then I'm done, right? Like what does PEO mean in relationship to full service payroll, or would somebody be in that boat where they'd be like, okay, well, there you go. Any payroll concern, I send to you.
That's a really great question. So I like to, I always say within ADP specifically, our PEO is a boutique division, and so I mean by that the service model and the full service model that you have in the PEO does look very different than what you would have on ADP Run today, right? Or what you used to operate on, Carrie. The service model within the PEO is a people support hands-on model. And just to do exactly what you mentioned, Dan, right? So there's a lot of liability in, helping employees decide on things like how to do a W-4, right? Or what benefits are the best benefits for them and their individual needs. And so we really want to alleviate the employer or, the employer being in the hot seat and getting those types of questions from employees. And so the service model is a people support model, meaning, yes, you have a one-on-one relationship for payroll. So to your point, if you were moving into a new state you've never operated in, or you have a child support garnishment in a state, that you need help getting made, you're just sending that right through to Carrie or Liz or whoever your payroll representative is. From a benefits standpoint, the benefits service is responsible for doing things like helping employees get enrolled in benefits, answering questions, helping them understand different types of insurance and plans so that they're not coming to you. They're doing the reconciliation of numbers behind the scenes, right? And so that, again, the employer isn't spending time reconciling different insurance bills and, making sure that terminated people are getting off the bills and new people are coming on. Third, you have someone that is what we call kind of loss prevention. So they manage your workers' comp policy. They help you, with standard operating procedures or trainings, evaluations, you name it. OSHA compliance is a big one. And then fourth and final is your account manager. That person is a human resource business partner. So very, very versed in everything HR. And they do act as your quarterback of your account. And so to your point, a good example that I always use is the pandemic. And when, everybody had to quickly adapt to being a work from home environment, the folks that were in ADP Run, right, and that were on our payroll solution, we, of course, provided them tons of education on all the different things, PPP and all the things that they needed to know. But it was really up to them to take the bull by the horns and do what they needed to do for their organization. In the PEO model, the HR administrator or account manager not only was educating and, proactively providing our clients all the information, but it was really more of a handhold. So they were handholding their clients. They were helping them actually prepare PPP documents and getting the info they needed. And because again, it goes back to that shared liability. So we want to make sure we have just as much skin in the game as they do as an employer to make sure that things are done correctly and obviously at the value and biggest benefit for the employer. So it is much more of a handheld service model. where you do have, people that you build relationships with, and that really get to know your organization.
And is there any kind of like, peace of mind that the employer has? Like, okay, if I totally mess this up, right? Like, am I on the hook for something when you're in some kind of a PEO or when you're in the pool, right? Does that provide any kind of coverage for them as far as a peace of mind type of thing?
Absolutely, in so many different ways. The idea behind both with benefits and workers' comp and being a part of the pool is that you are isolating yourself from things that are out of your control, right? So when you think about benefits, right? I mean, if you're a company and you've got people's children or spouses on your medical plan, you have no idea if they're healthy, if they're not, if they had a major surgery. All of those things are out of your control. However, those things dictate your medical or your benefit renewal year over year. So, if you're a company and let's say you had, 3 babies within the company that were born that were on your plan that year, that's a lot of claims. That is totally going to affect your plan the next year, but it's out of your control. Now, if that same thing happened under the PEO with our 700,000 plus, you are not going, you are protected, right? Those 3 babies in your one company aren't going to affect the pool overall. So there's a huge peace of mind for business owners in the sense that, you have no control over your employees' health, over their dependents or spouse's health and what happens to them. And so it gives them control back and allows them to know that, financially, I know that no matter what happens this year, whether it's a great year or a bad year, I am not going, what the number I see at the end is not going to be dictated by that because I am a part of something so much larger. My little, group is not going to affect the pool. And that would be the same for workers' compensation, which is why a lot of times, a lot of blue collar companies are really great fits for PEOs because their workers' comp is such a high ticket item for them, obviously. And again, there are going to be claims, there are going to be accidents that are out of the owner's control. And so by being a part of a much larger policy, they are isolating themselves from seeing those big jumps in rates the following year if they were to have a claim against their own individual policy. So there is a lot of value, Dan, to a business owner, a lot of peace of mind that things are going to happen and they're not going to expect to, as I say, get white knuckled when the renewal comes in every year and worry like, oh my gosh, are we going to see a 20% or, is the plan going to water down, right? I mean, that's another problem is the rates go up, but the plans themselves become more watered down. And so you get to a point where is what you're paying for even worth it? And so there's many benefits to that and a lot of peace of mind. And that is, again, the model behind a PEO. It's cost containment long-term for businesses. I always like to say, it's not really, we don't look as ourselves as a vendor to a company, really more of a partner. Because typically when groups come on to PEO, they're there for the long haul because they do see a big ROI year over year at being able to contain their 2 biggest expenses, obviously benefit packages and workers' comp, typically outside of payroll.
Right. Now, as if you could speak a little bit to the professional accountants that we might be talking to, what kind of benefit would they, when it gets a little complicated like that, when they're dealing with a client that is in this kind of situation, can they get themselves in trouble, or could they where do they fit in, to this kind of situation where the company's a little bit more complex in this payroll situation?
Yeah. So we have accounting firms, just like, Carrie, that use this product for their own individual firms. all the time, which is great because they see the value in it and they can then assist and help their clients, to your point, Dan, when situations arise, when they realize that things are becoming more complex or, that they need some additional help. Even a great example is international, back to people working all across the country. Yesterday, we spoke with an accounting firm that's got a client that's got US-based employees and now overseas employees for the first time. And certainly that's not something an accountant wants to dabble in at all. And so it's an extra tool in the pocket of the firm, the accountant, to be able to say, hey, we have a solution for you. Here's why, here's what it can do for you. And again, kind of mitigate the risk that comes with having employees, and, typically allow them, again, back to managing their business and focusing on what they went into business to do. So many times companies, if you really stop and think about it, spend so much time with what I call the day-to-day, HR minutia, that is not revenue generating. It is not moving the business forward. And so the accountants we find are, kind of that sounding board for their clients, typically the first place they go, right? I need help. Here's my situation. What do I do? So in your position, being educated on it, being educated on your options, how it could be beneficial, and then having it in your pocket as an extra, tool to be able to provide only makes you a better, stronger partner to your clients today.
Awesome. And then for the people that have signed up for it, with that HR advisor, that's the person that can help them make their employee manual up to date and talk through reviews for employees and that kind of cadence, things to
absolutely
attract new. And I think, isn't there also, they can also help you find new talent with something?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So everything from recruitment to retirement and everything in between. Absolutely. So, it's whether it's kind of the basic side of HR that they need help with, but, most people don't realize, but, HR should be a strategic position within an organization. That is talent management, managing your people. Your people are your greatest asset, and they directly impact your bottom line. So many times clients get bogged down with all the tactical side of HR that they're losing the aspect of the strategic side. And that's where the PEO is such a great partner, because first of all, the technology is taking care of the tactical side. It's doing all of those things for them that they perhaps were doing on their own before, so that they can focus on the strategic side of HR. To your point, Carrie, they're not worried about handbooks and job descriptions and, things of that nature. They're focused on succession planning, performance, compensation reviews, right? Brand, culture, talent development, all the things that are strategic for an organization and that truly are such an important piece, but so often get put on the back burner for companies.
Mm-hmm. And when a bookkeeper or accounting professional is specializing in maybe offering, some kind of payroll service, and things get a little more complicated, I can see this as being a step back, right? Like this is outside of my realm of control. But when you are in like a PEO situation with as a business, what would be an ideal situation from the business's perspective with regards to a point of contact at the business to interface with the PEO team, right? Should it be one person? Should it be a team of people? I mean, I'm sure that could depend on the business itself, but what do you find works best?
So, to your point, Dan, it could be a lot of different things. The organization itself could probably, dictate that. I think probably a lot of times, a lot of what I've seen in my 17 years is, a lot of companies, it doesn't matter if you have 20 employees or 500, they don't have, huge HR departments. It's one person or two people maybe that, really even hired to do a lot of the things that they're doing when it comes to employee management. They've just kind of, adopted the hats over the years. And so typically what we find is, you have, if it's only one person managing everything, they're typically our main point of contact, and they're the ones that are communicating with their team at ADP. If there is an organization that strictly, for example, has a risk consultant, or maybe it is a blue collar business, right? And they have an internal person that kind of manages risk and safety trainings and things of that nature, then we do find that person typically is a direct connect into the ADP team with the risk person. So it kind of depends if they have certain specific positions within. A lot of times it's one or two people, and they end up communicating with all four of the different ADP, service members. And the accountant is a part of that too. So, on y'all's side of the house, you all have the ability to be linked into their account, to pull reports, to be able to help advise them, anything. So you all have access to be as involved as you or the client wish for you to be as well, when it comes to direct contact with the group.
Got it. Carrie, any final thoughts? I think we went over our half hour a little bit.
No, I just think this is a really great, and we just started ours, so we're still taking advantage of some of the benefits there. You made me think of some more I didn't realize, like the word insurance. But it's nice to, you can, as a pro advisor or an accountant, or even as a business, to be able to have access to this, this component, so you can continue to grow. Because like you say, if you're not taking care of your talent, you're going to be in a bad shape.
Yeah, because if the only thing in your toolbox is desktop payroll for QuickBooks, you've got assisted payroll, and that's it. And so none of the things that Elizabeth was talking about today, you can take advantage of. Maybe a little bit here and there. They're starting to add some things with retirement services and those types of things, but not
comprehensive
total source, as the case may be.
Exactly.
So Elizabeth, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming on and really giving us a good understanding of what a PEO is, and when things get a little bit more complicated when it comes to payroll, what other options are out there. So we'll continue our Workshop Wednesday, talking about sales tax. I think we'll move into our sales tax module. So we went right from payroll to sales tax. Boy, we're just talking all these compliance things, very edge of your seat for the workshop.
Try to make it fun. So
yeah.
And Dan, if I could just leave you all with two facts. I think, facts are really important. And if y'all don't hear anything else we said today, it is proof that companies that are on PEOs today, the ROI of being on a PEO is 27% to the company. So it is very, very valuable. On average, cost savings is about $1,700 per employee a year, by, again, bringing everything together. Those are pretty strong numbers for a company to be able to see what the ROI is from moving into a model like this.
Good
Awesome.
points.
All good points. So yes, thanks again, everyone, for joining us here today, and we'll see you next time on the Workshop Wednesday.
Have a
Take
great
care.
week.